Radical love does not simply fit into the framework of what is comfortable or conventional. It disrupts the norms we have grown accustomed to, shakes the foundations of how we interact with people, and forces us to reconsider what love actually means. It does not ask for permission. It enters spaces where it is least expected and most resisted. It is not passive, nor is it polite in the way society often defines love. It is an active, powerful force that does not wait for the right moment, but creates the moment itself. This kind of love does not conform to expectations. It does not operate within the boundaries that culture, fear, or personal experience dictate. It refuses to be convenient or predictable. Instead, it demands that we step into discomfort, that we embrace the unknown, and that we choose to engage with people and situations that may challenge every part of who we are. Radical love is the kind of love that interrupts cycles of bitterness, anger, and indifference. It does not allow people to remain trapped in their divisions, but instead forces confrontation with something greater. Disruptive love sees injustice and refuses to turn away. It recognizes pain and chooses to step into it rather than walk around it. It does not ignore brokenness. It enters into the depths of it with the intention of bringing healing. This love calls for action, for movement, for decisions that are often costly. It is not love that simply exists in thought or sentiment. It is love that is demonstrated through radical choices. It forces a response, whether of resistance or transformation, but it never leaves things as they are. Radical love makes people uncomfortable. It does not fit within a safe, controlled narrative. It reaches for the outcasts, the rejected, the forgotten. It extends its arms to those who are deemed unworthy by social or moral standards. It does not wait for someone to earn it. It does not require perfection or conditions. It is given freely, even when it is misunderstood. People resist this kind of love because it confronts the walls they have built, the categories they have created, and the judgments they have settled into. It exposes the ways in which love has been limited to only those who are easy to love. This love disrupts by refusing to let hate win. It stands firm in the face of hostility. It does not retreat when confronted with opposition, nor does it respond in kind. Instead, it counters every act of hatred with relentless compassion. It turns the other cheek not out of weakness, but out of defiance against the systems of power that rely on division. It refuses to be manipulated by cycles of retaliation. It refuses to be manipulated by cycles of retaliation. It does not simply endure injustice. It fights against it with a force that is stronger than violence. Mercy. Radical love does not let comfort dictate its direction. It moves into places where it is least welcome. It enters the spaces where people are rejected, where wounds are fresh, where reconciliation seems impossible. It does not pick sides based on convenience. It does not choose silence when voices need to be raised. It does not settle for shallow gestures when deep transformation is needed. It will break the unspoken rules that keep people apart. It will challenge institutions, traditions, and mindsets that have reinforced separation. It will not apologize for making people uneasy because love was never meant to be easy. This love disrupts even the people who carry it. It does not allow them to stay the same. It forces them to unlearn prejudices, to confront their own limitations, to acknowledge their own need for grace. It does not let them remain passive observers in a world desperate for restoration. It requires sacrifice. It demands vulnerability. It pushes people beyond their own self-interest into something much greater than themselves. It calls for a shift in perspective, from loving only when it is deserved to loving especially when it is not. When radical love enters a situation, it will not leave things untouched. It will shake the foundations. It will create tension. It will challenge the status quo. It will dismantle comfort zones. It will cause people to question everything they thought they knew about how love should work. It will not ask for permission to exist. It will not conform to human expectations. It will not wait until it is welcomed. It will simply arrive and nothing will remain the same. Love sees beyond labels, beyond the categories that society places on people, beyond the walls that have been built between individuals. It refuses to be confined by the limitations of human judgment. It does not look at a person and see only their race, their status, their past mistakes, or their affiliations. It looks deeper, past the surface, into the essence of who they are. It recognizes that each person carries a story, a complexity, a depth that cannot be summarized by a single word or stereotype. Love does not reduce people to convenient labels. It restores their humanity. Labels create distance. They allow people to keep others at arm's length, to define them in ways that make them easier to dismiss, avoid, or judge. It is far simpler to interact with people based on assumptions rather than taking the time to truly understand them. When someone is categorized, they are often treated as though that label is their entire identity. The rich, the poor, the criminal, the religious, the outsider, the privileged, the oppressed. These words carry weight, but they never tell the full story. They strip people of their complexity, of their struggles, of their capacity to change. Labels create boundaries that dictate who is worthy of love and who is not. Love sees through these barriers. It recognizes that a person is not defined solely by their worst moments, nor by the circumstances they were born into. It does not allow prejudice to dictate how someone is treated. Love does not operate on the basis of convenience or comfort. It actively chooses to step into spaces where judgment and misunderstanding thrive. It listens before assuming. It seeks understanding before casting blame. It approaches every individual with the belief that they are more than what the world has said about them. This kind of love refuses to dehumanize. It does not participate in the divisions that society enforces. It does not engage in the narratives that separate people into categories of us versus them. It does not allow differences to become excuses for exclusion. It does not look at a person and see only what is familiar or acceptable. It embraces the fullness of who they are, even the parts that may seem foreign or uncomfortable. Love does not require similarity to exist. It thrives in diversity. It does not fear the unknown. It welcomes it. To see beyond labels is to acknowledge that every person carries wounds, fears, and desires that may not be immediately visible. It is to recognize that no one is simply the sum of their outward appearance or past choices. People are constantly growing, evolving, learning. They are more than their mistakes, more than their successes, more than the roles they have been assigned. Love chooses to see the unseen. It looks beyond the obvious and seeks out the heart. It refuses to let a single characteristic define the entirety of a person's worth. Love does not wait for perfection. It does not demand that people fit a certain mold before offering kindness, grace, and acceptance. It is not conditional. It does not say, you must earn this by proving you are worthy. It does not wait for an apology before extending forgiveness. It does not require understanding before showing compassion. It reaches for people even when they do not fit into preconceived ideas of who should be loved. Love, it embraces those who have been cast aside, misunderstood, and overlooked. It sees beyond reputation, beyond circumstance, beyond status. When love chooses to look past labels, it breaks cycles of prejudice and indifference. It disrupts the comfortable ease of judgment. It dismantles the systems that keep people divided. It challenges individuals to go beyond surface-level interactions and truly engage with others in ways that require empathy and patience. It calls for a deeper way of seeing, one that refuses to settle for assumptions and demands a commitment to understanding. Love does not categorize people into those who deserve love and those who do not. It does not operate according to human standards of worthiness. It does not see barriers, it sees people. It does not measure by success or failure, by social standing or reputation. It does not love selectively. It does not exclude based on what is easy or socially acceptable. Love that truly sees beyond labels cannot be limited. It cannot be contained within neat boxes or predefined boundaries. It goes further. It looks deeper. It chooses people, not categories. Forgiveness precedes justice, not because justice is unimportant, but because without forgiveness, justice often turns into vengeance. True justice is not about retribution, it is about restoration. It seeks to heal what has been broken rather than simply punishing what has been done. Forgiveness is the foundation that allows justice to be more than just a transaction of consequences. It transforms it into an act of redemption. When someone is wronged, the instinctive reaction is to demand payback, to ensure that the one who caused harm feels the weight of what they have done. The human heart craves balance, a sense that suffering must be repaid with suffering. But forgiveness disrupts this natural tendency. It does not erase the pain, nor does it ignore the reality of injustice. But it refuses to let that pain dictate the path forward. It chooses a different way, one that does not deny justice, but reshapes it into something that restores rather than destroys. Forgiveness is not weakness. It does not mean that wrongdoing is excused or that consequences are avoided. It does not pretend that everything is fine when deep wounds remain. Instead, it acknowledges the pain fully, confronts the reality of what has happened, and still chooses to release the grip of resentment. It is an act of power, of taking control away from the cycle of anger and placing it into the hands of grace. Justice without forgiveness can quickly become a tool for bitterness rather than healing. To forgive is to break free from the burden of hatred. Unforgiveness binds people to the past, locking them in an endless loop of pain and anger. It consumes energy, distorts perception, and often ends up hurting the one who refuses to forgive more than the one who committed the wrong. It is a weight that drags people down, keeping them from moving forward. Justice that is rooted in unforgiveness is often more about making someone pay than about making things right. It focuses on punishment rather than reconciliation, on destruction rather than rebuilding. But when forgiveness leads, justice is given the space to be something higher. It becomes a force for true change. Forgiveness does not mean the absence of accountability. It does not erase responsibility. Instead, it allows justice to be about more than just punishment. It allows it to be about redemption. When forgiveness is present, justice is not just about making the guilty suffer. It is about restoring what has been broken. It shifts the focus from simply repaying harm to creating a future where healing is possible. This kind of justice is not about ignoring wrongdoing, but about addressing it in a way that does not create further division. It is about looking at the offender and seeing more than their offense. It recognizes that no one is beyond the possibility of transformation. Justice alone can declare someone guilty, but forgiveness creates the possibility for change. It allows people to be more than their mistakes. It does not remove consequences, but it changes the heart behind them. Instead of justice being fueled by anger, it is fueled by hope. The hope that even the worst situations can be redeemed, that even the most broken relationships can be healed, that even the deepest wounds can find restoration. Kindness is often mistaken for weakness, for something soft and passive, something that bends too easily. But true kindness is a weapon. It is not weak. It is not fragile. It does not submit to fear or hatred. Kindness is an act of defiance in a world that expects hostility. It is a force that dismantles walls, disrupts cycles of retaliation, and challenges the expectation that power must always be exerted through dominance. The world teaches that strength is about control, about making others submit, about proving superiority, but kindness operates on an entirely different level. It does not seek to overpower, but to transform. It does not fight with aggression, but with relentless compassion. It is an active force, intentional and unyielding. It refuses to be dictated by the actions of others. It is not given only when it is deserved or when it is easy. It is a deliberate choice to go against what seems natural, to respond with love in situations where cruelty is expected. To wield kindness as a weapon is to refuse to be controlled by the darkness in others. It is to remain steadfast in the face of hatred, to continue showing grace even when it is met with resistance. Kindness does not mean tolerating injustice or pretending that pain does not exist. It does not mean being passive or allowing oneself to be taken advantage of. It means standing firm in love, even when it costs something. It is the refusal to meet violence with violence, anger with anger, insult with insult. It is choosing a higher path when the world insists on dragging everything lower. Kindness disarms people. It is unexpected. It breaks through defenses that have been built up through years of hurt and distrust. It forces people to confront their own assumptions, their own prejudices, their own cycles of behavior. It does not fight back in the way the world understands fighting, but it wins battles that anger never could. It changes hearts, not through force, but through persistence. It is not about being nice for the sake of appearances, but about embodying a different way of living, one that refuses to mirror the brokenness of the world. The power of kindness is in its endurance. Anyone can be kind when it is convenient, when there is something to gain, when the recipient is appreciative. But true kindness persists even when it is rejected. It does not need validation. It does not shrink back when it is mocked or ignored. It does not measure its success by how others respond, but by the integrity of its own existence. It gives freely, not because it expects something in return, but because it refuses to be shaped by bitterness. Kindness is an act of rebellion against systems built on division. It refuses to play by the rules of a world that values power over people. It does not accept the idea that hostility must be met with greater hostility. It chooses to see the humanity in others, even when they cannot see it themselves. It breaks cycles of revenge by refusing to participate in them. It is not passive. It is a force that actively reshapes relationships, communities, and even enemies. This kind of kindness is not naive. It sees people clearly, not through an illusion of perfection, but through the understanding that every person carries wounds, fears, and struggles. It recognizes that hurt people often hurt others. It does not excuse cruelty, but it responds to it in a way that does not perpetuate more harm. It seeks restoration rather than punishment. It chooses to reach for healing rather than deepening the divide. Kindness is not about being agreeable or avoiding conflict. It is about standing firm in a different kind of strength. It is about refusing to let external circumstances dictate internal character. It does not mean being silent in the face of wrong, but speaking truth in a way that invites transformation instead of destruction. It does not mean allowing injustice to continue, but confronting it with a spirit that seeks redemption instead of revenge. It takes far more strength to be kind than to be cruel. Anger is easy. Retaliation is instinctive. Meeting hostility with more hostility requires no discipline, no restraint. But kindness is a choice that must be made again and again, even when it is difficult, even when it does not seem to make a difference, even when the world does not understand. It is a weapon that cuts through hatred, not by destroying people, but by breaking down the barriers that keep them trapped in their own cycles of bitterness. It does not fight with force, but with something even more powerful, the refusal to become like the very thing it stands against. Love thrives in tension, in the spaces where things are not simple, where right and wrong are not always clear, where justice and mercy pull in opposite directions. It does not exist only in ease and comfort. It is forged in struggle, in conflict, in the places where division threatens to tear people apart. Love does not wait for perfect conditions. It steps into the tension and chooses to remain. Tension is where differences collide. It is where people are forced to face one another in their brokenness, their flaws, their deeply held beliefs that may stand in direct opposition. It is where opposing perspectives meet, where wounds are exposed, where history and personal experience shape how people see the world. Love does not avoid these moments. It does not retreat when things become difficult. It does not choose one side and abandon the other. Instead, it stays, refusing to be pushed away, refusing to let conflict be the final word. The world often teaches that love should be easy, that it should flow naturally without effort or struggle. But real love does not grow in places where there is no challenge. It does not develop where everything is neat and controlled. Love is tested when it is stretched, when it is forced to navigate tension without breaking. It is in these moments that love proves itself, not by running away, but by standing firm in the middle of the chaos. Tension exists between justice and grace. The heart cries out for fairness, for wrongs to be made right, for consequences to be served. But love does not rush to punish. It does not seek vengeance disguised as justice. At the same time, love does not dismiss the pain of those who have been wronged. It does not offer grace as an excuse to ignore suffering. It holds both at once. The desire to make things right and the call to show mercy. It does not choose one and discard the other. It wrestles with both, knowing that true healing comes not from pretending there is no harm, but from choosing a way forward that does not leave anyone behind. Love thrives in the tension between differences. It does not demand that people think alike before they are accepted. It does not require agreement before offering kindness. It does not erase identity in order to create unity. It acknowledges that people come from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different histories that shape the way they see the world. And still, it chooses connection. It does not need uniformity to exist. It holds space for disagreement, for complexity, for the messiness of real relationships. It does not force resolution, but chooses to walk through the tension rather than abandon it. Tension is uncomfortable. It pushes people to face their own assumptions, their own biases, their own limits. It challenges the idea that love is only for those who are easy to love. It asks the hard questions. Can love exist when trust has been broken? Can love continue when forgiveness has not yet been given? Can love hold on when everything else is falling apart? These are not easy questions. They do not come with simple answers. But love does not run from them. It leans into them, even when the answers are unclear. Love thrives in the tension between fear and courage. Fear tells people to protect themselves, to keep their distance, to avoid risk. It convinces them that love is too dangerous, that vulnerability leads to pain, that self-preservation is more important than connection. But love refuses to be controlled by fear. It acknowledges risk, but chooses courage anyway. It understands that real love cannot exist without the possibility of being hurt, but it also knows that avoiding pain means avoiding life itself. It does not let fear dictate who is worthy of love and who is not. It steps into the unknown and chooses to trust even when there is no guarantee of safety. The power of love is found in its willingness to remain where others leave. It does not back down when things become difficult. It does not withdraw when tension arises. It stays when it would be easier to go. It continues when it would be easier to stop. It wrestles with complexity rather than demanding simplicity. It does not wait for peace before showing up. It creates peace by choosing to love in the midst of the struggle. It does not eliminate tension, but transforms it into something new. Love is not meant to be safe. It is not something that exists only within the boundaries of comfort, predictability, or control. Real love is risky. It requires stepping into the unknown, opening oneself up to rejection, pain, and disappointment. It demands vulnerability, the willingness to give without knowing what will be returned. It does not operate on guarantees or assurances. It is an act of courage, a deliberate choice to risk the heart for the sake of something greater. The world teaches that safety is the highest priority. It tells people to protect themselves, to guard their emotions, to build walls that keep them from being hurt. It encourages love that is calculated, love that only gives when there is certainty that it will be reciprocated. But this is not real love. Love cannot be reduced to a transaction, to a measured exchange where risk is eliminated. It cannot flourish in spaces where fear dictates every decision. Love is an invitation to step beyond self-preservation, to embrace the possibility of both joy and suffering, to enter into relationships without the assurance of a perfect outcome. Love is dangerous because it disrupts the status quo. It challenges the way things are, refusing to accept division, indifference, or complacency. It does not allow people to remain unchanged. It calls them into deeper relationships, into acts of sacrifice, into moments where they must decide between comfort and connection. Love is not passive. It does not sit quietly on the sidelines, waiting for conditions to be right. It moves first. It takes the first step, even when the next step is unclear. It chooses to engage, to reach out, to show up when it would be easier to turn away. There's a risk in loving people who may never love in return. There is a risk in offering kindness to those who might reject it. There is a risk in standing for what is right when others may walk away. Love does not come with a guarantee of being understood, appreciated, or valued. It does not promise an absence of pain, but it chooses to love anyway. It does not wait for certainty before giving itself fully. It embraces the reality that love, by its very nature, is vulnerable. To love is to open oneself up to the possibility of being wounded, but it is also the only way to experience the depth of what it means to be truly alive. Love is not reckless in the sense of being careless, but it is fearless in its pursuit. It does not hesitate when it is needed most. It does not withdraw to protect itself from heartbreak. It is willing to be misunderstood, to be rejected, to be taken for granted, because it knows that love is not about what is received in return. It is about what is given. It is about pouring out even when it feels like nothing is coming back. It is about believing that the risk is worth it, that people are worth it, that the possibility of change, healing, and reconciliation is worth more than the comfort of self-protection. The risk of love is not just about personal relationships. It is about the willingness to love in a world that often responds with indifference or hostility. It is about standing in the face of injustice and choosing to care when apathy would be easier. Thanks for watching.